We'll ask Freddy first, the first question. But I've seen this film so many times, but it still really touches me every time I see it. And Andrea, the producer's in here, and also Charlie Phillips from The Guardian, who exec produced this as well. Jeanie, who directed and produced it, and Freddy, who is in it. So Freddy, tell me why Jeanie? Why was she the right person, and what was your working relationship? Because it's a very, there are a lot of very sensitive things in this film, and it required a lot of trust.
Yeah, certainly. Early on, I don't suppose I could really say why, because we didn't know each other at the start, but we just clicked when we met. I was meeting filmmakers because I knew I wanted to document this process, and I'm a journalist. I love documentary. I wanted to make something powerful and different, a different kind of trans story, and all those things. And so I went to Charlie, my colleague, and he introduced me to people. And I had a couple of chats with different directors, and I had this sense of I don't really know. I've never made a documentary before, and I don't know even what I want to make is possible. And so I sort of started to doubt, is this going to work? And then met Jeanie, and all of those doubts kind of went away. And I think the first thing was that I described what I wanted to do, and you described it back to me better than I'd said it to you in the first place. And so there was almost no time at all. But then the trust built over time. I just held on to this feeling of I know what I want to do. I think I'm doing it for the right reasons. Do I still feel that whenever if I was having a difficult day, and just thought, okay, how do I feel? And it was still there. And I was like, okay, so I'm gonna carry on. And we just got to know each other in a really intense way.
Yeah, and I think it was a really collaborative process as well, wasn't it, Jeanie?
Yeah, sure. I mean, one of the things that seemed really important at the beginning of this is that although I'm not trans, I can make a film about someone else's story because that's what I've done my whole career. But it was really, really important for me to understand the ways in which trans stories have been told that have been hurtful and damaging to the community, damaging to audiences, and to really know about that. So you don't hear Freddy's dead name in film, and you don't get to know what the baby's called, and you don't do that cheesy, hey, it's a girl to boy story that sort of treats transition like a magic trick. So we just didn't want to do that at all. And so it was really about sort of listening and also making a story about a life. We deal with the transition in a way. We established that Freddy's trans in the first 2 minutes because the film is about a life, and I wanted the film to feel extraordinary and small and domestic. So there is washing up and walking a dog, but then there's also getting pregnant and giving birth. So because all of those things are possible in their life, so can we do that rather than make it a story about a life, really?
And Freddy, how do you? Because you've been with the film a while now. We've had screenings at Tribeca Hot Dogs. How did you feel when you first saw it? You were very apprehensive.
I can say this. Jeanie knows I was incredibly apprehensive because at that point I still felt like we were in this kind of filmmaker-subject relationship, and I didn't really know what the story was that Jeanie was trying to tell, and I tried to give her that creative freedom the whole way through, because even though I instigated the project and I was a collaborator and we were talking, and Jeanie was so open to learning all those things that she was just talking about avoiding tropes and respecting my boundaries when I did want to help her and that kind of thing. But the flip side of that was just sort of knowing that if I tried to get too involved or overstep her boundaries, then it would damage the creative process and her creative vision, which I had a sense of, even though I didn't really understand it, and I just had to sit with that and trust. That's what I did. And so on the day we went to see the film in a screening room in London, I was terrified. I just had no idea. I was like, how on earth is this going to work? It's been 2.5 years, I suppose, at that point, and there's been so much that's happened, and some of it was so hard, and look, I don't know how that works anyway. So, but we watched it and I was floored and I couldn't believe it, and it resonated so much, and I could just relax. And it's not everything, and that's quite important for me to keep in mind. Is this like there's a lot that isn't in there, because that's what filmmaking is about, and I think that's something I learned as we were doing it. That helped me to relax about it as well. But yeah, I think it's really amazing. If am I allowed to say that?
I think one of the things for me that was difficult is it's hard to articulate what you're doing in the moment of doing it. So I would drive down to Deal from Nottingham and stay down in Deal for a period of time. And I was training for a half marathon, so I would run along the coast and I would just really think about what the process of filming together was like. What did I feel like? Could I translate that to an audience? And allow sort of images to flow into my mind. It sounds like I'm a hippie, I'm not a hippie, but to sort of like be open to what this felt like, and could I create visuals that represented the feelings that I was having so an audience could try and participate in that feeling. So a lot of the things that you see in the film are the things that sort of drifted into my mind. So I was trying to imagine what dysphoria looked like, and just showing the passing of time. So it was really freeing as well to make a film in the present tense, and just to sort of to try and plot each step of the story, because film, the last two, The Last Watch and this film are both films that I've made in the present tense. And I really love it as an approach, rather than, I've made films which have uncovered stories of the past, like Orion and the Great Hip Hop Hoax. And this one just felt like I'm interested in intimacy and small stories. How can we get closer? And also the idea of when it was tough. Because I've got to say this is one of the hardest things I've ever done. And it felt like a marathon. And it was helpful to think, well, we're on mile 5. This is where we are right now. And it was really important to lean into the toughness of it and to not put the camera away because it was hard. And so sometimes that was really hard with you to be able to say, okay, we're going to film this. But then there was always the choice of not using stuff, but it felt important. So things like the birth, or not being pregnant, and being with your family member, all those things are so important, I think.
But also still, this is an observational film, but it still has the Jeanie Finlay poetry. You use metaphors a lot, and your films have a real sensibility and an atmosphere, and you've still managed to get that into an observational film, and it's a mark of your kind of stamp as a filmmaker, which makes it a very special and beautiful film. But we should open it up to you guys. So has anyone got any questions for these two? Over there in the middle.
Hi, that was wonderful. Thank you for your bravery and the wonderful story. So I'm working on a film, and it's a very intimate story. And when you were staying down in Deal, how close did you stay? Did you sort of stay in the family home, or were you in a hotel? Like, how much time did you spend together?
So I stayed in an Airbnb and would just camp out sometimes. So when the baby was due, I didn't know when it was going to come. So I was there for 3 weeks, waiting, running, waiting. Trying to talk to Freddy.
Yeah, and I would be often quite reluctant to talk at that point, and so I think you probably wanted to talk to me more than I would talk to you.
I was a nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big part of it, isn't it? I would say, I feel like we've been through a huge journey with this, because this is a film that's not just about pregnancy, it's about the effect of testosterone and how that can change everything, I think. And that was something that I wasn't prepared for in any way. So, yeah, that's been a lot. That was a lot.
Yeah, I just want to say, it sounds like we're kind of like talking about really intense stuff, but we've talked about this a lot, and we're fine. Like, if we refer flippantly to something that was really hard, it's just like, it's because we've talked about it a lot, so it's all good.
And it's worth saying, like, at the beginning of the process, one of the things I sort of said to you is, I'm here to make the film. I'm not here to be your friend. And we may end up being friends, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here to make the film. And that's partly for my boundaries, so I feel okay, so that we get to know each other on camera. But now we've gone through so much that there is this intense relationship, I think, and with your baby, which I love with my bones. From seeing the baby being born, you know, it's a lot. But I think that's hard to hear at the beginning. Hey, I'm not here to be your friend. Yeah. I want to get to know you, but let's take our time. Yeah. That's tough, I think.
And sorry, how did that feel for Freddy? Just to hear your side of it. Sorry to double question it. I don't mean to be that guy.
Well, I don't know if you really said it as explicitly as that in the early stages. Like,
I did.
or maybe I forgot. I don't know. Like, I don't think I understood, and it took me the process of making the film to really understand and sort of appreciate why all those things were important. And but I think a lot of why I struggled actually just came from within inside me and the dysphoria I was going through. And you know, Jeanie didn't expect that. I didn't expect that. We were like totally taking it day by day, and just like I say, you know, going back to that original motivation and just checking in with myself. And I'm sure Jeanie was doing the same thing. And but you know, it sounds trite, but it's like it was worth it. And it was, you know, it was a sort of respectful, consenting, trusting relationship, even when it was really fucking hard. Yeah.
Anyone else? Lady there.
I thought it was a really great film. I cried quite a few times and laughed quite a few times. So I guess that's probably what you might have wanted to achieve. But when the film finished, I remarked that it was a really brave decision to choose to make that film. And there was a bit of it where you said you were stopping work early, you didn't want your colleagues to know. And I just wondered what made you want to make the film when also it seemed that you wanted to be quite private about what you were going through.
Yeah, I think a distinction that doesn't come across necessarily is that when I'm talking there in the film, I'm talking about then, as in being in that time and place, not wanting to become a story, rather than I always knew I wanted to tell my own story on my own terms and in my own time. And so for me, that was when I wasn't pregnant anymore, when it wasn't going to be jumped on by the tabloids, because tabloids aren't so interested in the story of a trans dad who happened to give birth a while ago but is no longer pregnant, so you can't take, like, you know, those photos. It's no longer the headline. And yeah, so like it seems like a contradiction, but in my mind it never was. It was just like I knew how I wanted to do it and put this team together to help it happen in that way. But then I suppose there is also an element of not realizing how hard I would have found it. Well, I would find it. So like, yeah, that was sort of not realizing how much my introvertedness would get in the way. Yeah.
Lady over there. Over in the middle.
Oh, hi, Freddy. Yeah, incredible. And, you know, speaking as a lesbian parent, just so proud to have this film out there, both of you. Fantastic role model. I guess the question I got for you is, where I work, we've got a guy who's transgender. He's an amazing guy. We talked a bit about it, and I'm also sort of reflecting on being a lesbian parent in the 80s when, you know, it was pretty invisible. And I just wondered, what advice would you give to other transgender men who want to give birth? And two, how did you get through that incredible loneliness?
I guess, I mean, I had my mum. My mum is usually here at these screenings, and she's not here today, and that feels really weird. So I'm glad to have the opportunity to sort of mention her and give her credit for, you know, she was the person that carried me through, like, often like, well, not literally, but, you know, in a huge way. But also I had an online community, which obviously is kind of hard to portray in film, but I'm sure they won't mind me saying that some of them are here today. So I'm not the only Seahorse dad in the room. I'm not sure how often that happens in history, but it's happening today, so that's awesome. And that's also the first piece of advice I would give anyone considering this is, I think maybe finding those groups might be difficult, but like if your friend is part of any kind of trans community, they probably have someone that might, like, you can find those things. There are groups that have like thousands of members. There are more people doing this than he probably thinks and that I thought at the time. You know, I think there's statistics about in 2016, something like 54 trans men gave birth in Australia. So that's kind of this, obviously it's not visible, but it's happening. And he will find everything he needs in those groups in terms of practical information, and he can make great friends there. And then there are midwives that will absolutely, you know, give him a great experience and be respectful. And in terms of finding those people, again, probably through those groups, you can get linked up. And I think, yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Who else? Lady here.
Yes, I want to say thank you. I just had a child and was really moved, and I was just wondering, Jeanie, you got these very intimate moments and really informal moments, and how are you filming with? Is it just you, or do you have someone doing sound, or how did you get those very relaxed, intimate moments?
The film's a real combination of filming, so a lot of it's just me, and although Pip, who does the sound, would probably appreciate it if I had a sound recordist, but I don't have a sound recordist because it's just another person getting in the way, so I never have sound. Then I worked with, I think it was 4 or 5 different additional camera people who could be there to support, but the main thing that I filmed, which was the most pressurised, was filming the birth, because I was written into Freddy's birth plan. And also, you know, if it hadn't gone ahead in a straightforward way, then there's no way we could have filmed it. So I was just waiting and didn't know. And it's with the had DP Richard to support me, and I drove to the hospital. I got a bit lost. I was really like petrified that I was going to miss the birth because I'm really geographically challenged. So we got in there, and he helped me put the cameras together because I was just like, oh god. Esme comes out and she says, he's in the pool now. You got to get in there. So I'm in the corner of the room on a tripod with a magic arm, and then Richard put the A-frame camera up over the pool, and then he came and whispered to me, it's there, but it's not on. And I'm like, why the fuck isn't it on? So while Freddy was having a contraction, I snuck over to the pool, angled the camera, focused it, switched it on, and prayed to Dolly Parton that the battery would last. And it did. But yeah, that was unreal. I was sort of watching it, and my adrenaline's going, and I'm being moved by the experience of watching this baby that we've all waited for being born. And then I'm also going, fuck, is it focus? And are we getting it? And then the midwives are getting in the way. So, yeah, it was amazing.
Someone towards the back there with a hat on.
That's great. Guys, I thought that was such a stunning story and really subtly told as well. I think, you know, it could have been dramatised in a way, you know, and it wasn't. I thought it was really, really lovely in that sense. One thing that I was going to ask you about was, how often would you meet up without kind of planning a filming date and without the camera? Where did the friendship kind of kick in? Or
We didn't meet that much. I mean, there were some discussions around how we were all getting on, but pretty much if I was there, I was filming. So I mean, I was making the Game of Thrones film at the same time as making this film. So sometimes I would film for a week in Belfast and then come and film in Deal, or edit for a week and then go to Belfast and film Game of Thrones. So it was a lot. I mean, it's just... So sometimes it was like, oh, we definitely need to film a scan. But then other times it's just about spending some time. So, like Poogate at the end, I was really enjoyed. and Esme shutting the door because she doesn't want me to film it, putting her hand through. Yeah, so I was just trying to find like micro dramas, like British storms in teacups, that were sort of, because one of the things that I think is really fascinating about this is about Britishness and about privacy and openness. So it's like, how do you tell a really open, really emotional, but also really private story? In a way, so I was trying to like balance, walk that thread. But I think it's important to just give time to things sometimes. So it's not scheduled. You don't know what's going to happen. Because if you schedule it, you're not listening, in a way, I think.
It's really interesting because it is a very British film, but it's amazing how it transcended that when the film went to America, and how it just moves and touches audiences wherever the film is, because it's about lots of universal themes. It's about having a baby, it's about being a dad, it's about about falling in love with your baby, it's about the stresses and trials that you go through when you're pregnant, and to get to being pregnant in the first place. So even though it is small and British, it's also very big because it transcends, it crosses barriers, I think, because it's about a universal subject.
I hope so. I mean, I feel like I've made a career out of filming shy people talking quietly, because the camera is a loudhailer, and that's what I'm always looking for in every film, is what's the quietest voice, or what's the smallest moment. Things like your matching slippers. It's really cute. Stuff like that is like, yeah, look, that's going in the film. Yeah. Are you taping up the draft in your kitchen?
And like the smallness, I was very keen for the film to feel that way as well, because I think one of my main motivations for wanting to share the story was this sense that I wanted it to be a sort of empathy engine, a sort of something that could be intimate enough to give someone who'd never met a trans person a chance to feel like they were actually spending an hour and a half with me. Because I heard this quote the other day, someone saying that prejudice does not survive proximity. And I think there's the trouble for trans people is there just aren't enough of us. Like there's so many people out there who don't understand, but who have no ill feeling whatsoever, but, sort of just need an opportunity to see that they're here, we're just like everyone else, but it's hard to believe because of what you read in the news a lot of the time, or you see online on Twitter and that kind of thing. So, the smallness of it is very important to me in that sense as well.
I think it's worth saying as well that I'm sort of, obviously we're looking to do outreach with midwives and the NHS, and the film will go out theatrically. We're looking for partners at the moment to help us do that, because we think that there's an importance about that proximity. But I'm really interested to see what happens when the film broadcasts on BBC Two at 9:00, because like when the Guardian trailer went up, it got picked up by the far right in the US, and then in the UK, the garbage fire that is a nightmare is Mumsnet, and it's just been horrific. So horrific. And it's just and sometimes it's just about the idea of something rather than even watching it. And so I don't know, it's scary, but not so scary that we wouldn't do it.
But for me, it's it's for a mainstream audience. It's to make people understand, and that's why. Sorry, I forgot to say that I'm Mandy from BBC Storyville, and I was looking after this project, and I'm really excited about the fact that it's going out on BBC Two in the fall. We don't know the exact date yet, but the fact that it is going out on Two at a really good time of night, I want as many people to see this film as possible, and I want, I'm hoping the press will pick up on this in a really positive way, and I know that Charlie's going to be egging them all on and doing his bit for The Guardian, but I honestly think that they will, because it's a story about love and families and the desire to have a baby, and so that's a really beautiful and special thing, and it's an insight into your world, Freddie, that is really precious. Has anyone got any questions before we come to an end? The person on the aisle? Lady.
Not only is it about, I just wanted to say in terms of the universal story and all the elements that you just said, I think it's also a universal, of course it's a particular story, and that's so important in terms of telling the trans experience specifically in terms of this theme, but it's also a universal story about gender. And I think we think that there's a pocket that's about trans experience, and then the mainstream popular audience will just think about those universal things about love and family, but actually it's a universal story about gender and the fact that it's a continuum and that we don't fit in it. And the greatest fear is the people who cling tightest to the kind of fixity of binary are the ones that have so much to learn through this film. So I just wanted to put in a case for this being a universal theme as well.
It was really interesting when the film played in Portland, someone asked about the moment that they really connected with or stayed with them was when your baby is born and it's proclaimed a boy immediately. Because he said, what does a boy even mean? What does that mean? And it wasn't about, are you going to raise your child gender neutral, because you're not doing that. But it was about, what does a boy mean? And, things like gender reveal parties are so much ingrained in our society. It's so weird.
Have we got time for one more?
There's a question.
Oh, sorry. Can we squeeze two in?
Yeah. Not that I'm biased, but...
Right, hi. That was incredible and moving, and thank you so much for doing it. It's so important. So I've also given birth to my kids. I had my third a month ago. My first two I had in Israel, and the second we actually did the film about. And when we did the film, I think maybe this has partly been answered with the Britishness, but when we did the film, I think about half the film was about kind of people reacting to me going to the supermarket, people talking about me behind my back when I went to buy a pizza, people staring at me and my toddler. I had a toddler when I was pregnant for the second time, and there was none of that in the film, and I wondered if it was because that you felt it was yellow or because that there is much less of that here. I mean, in my third pregnancy, which was here, there definitely was much less of that, but I feel there still maybe was some. Not to my face the way it was in Israel. I live in, but maybe that's because I live in Hebden Bridge. Anyway, yeah, so I just wondered if you decided not to go there, or it just wasn't, or, yeah.
It's kind of a mix, right? Like, I'll say for my part, I was being very low-key, and I was, avoiding situations that I thought might result in conflict because I just didn't think I could deal with that at the time. But also, no one that I was aware of ever read me as pregnant, even right up until the end. So I think,
to be honest, I was about twice your size.
Right, yeah, yeah, and it's one of those things you just can't plan or predict.
Yeah.
It just that's the way it happened. And I think if we'd wanted to get those kind of supermarket or like in public reactions, we would have kind of had to manufacture them. I think, which is not something, and that's kind of why I wanted to work with a filmmaker like Jeanie, because I knew that she would never put me in that kind of situation. But yeah,
I mean, yeah, it's worth saying that like Freddy carried really small. I mean, when I was pregnant, someone asked me if I was having twins, and I was like 12 weeks pregnant. It's like, thanks. So I was sort of waiting for that to happen, and it didn't happen. And then people just read you as having a beer belly, if they did. So
can I, hi, I'm the other Seahorse dad in the audience. Hi. What I found really interesting when I was, because I'm a bit overweight anyway, everyone just thought I had a beer belly for a really long time. And then I didn't realize that I sort of held my bump, because you do that kind of protective thing. And so I got this guy like in KFC giving me the eyeballs of like, what is that guy? And I realized that I was doing it, and I just gave him this like huge smile, like, because when I first, actually, Freddie and I were pregnant at the same time. And we spoke about it, and I was like, I don't want to do anything public. I'm never going to say anything. I want to be really secret about it. But by that point, especially during pregnancy, where I felt very vulnerable, and I didn't want to be a news story. But by that point, I was just like, actually, yeah, I'm doing this. And my masculine body is having this masculine pregnancy, and I'm rocking this beard. And then about a week later, we were in a garden centre, and this kid just went, Mummy, why is that man's belly so big? And I never got to hear the answer because she ushered him away. But yeah, I thought. Yeah.
And that's why it was amazing to have Jacob as a friend through this experience, because he could tell me shit like that when I couldn't figure out for myself. So thank you, Jacob.
How many Seahorse dads are in the audience?
It's planted everywhere. Just the three of us. As far as I'm aware, I shouldn't assume.
Are there any others?
You'll never know.
We have time for one last question down here, down the front.
Thank you. Just yesterday, I saw news from my friends, and there are two female, they are lesbian, and they are a couple. They are punched by a man in London, and I live in London. I was so shocked because I think in London actually it's very open city. So I want to ask Freddy, how do you feel about, as a gay transgender man live in UK? Do you have equal rights? I mean, completely equal rights. Thank you.
No, I mean, no, I suppose, because I think my experience of pregnancy being so positive, every healthcare professional I encountered, apart from one, was amazing. I think that was completely down to luck, and I think my midwife was a family friend, for example. So no, I don't think. I'm not sure if it's about rights so much as just kind of provision for making sure that if someone like me is going to have a baby, then we can be like safe and make sure that we can access the healthcare that we need. Like, I don't think that we're not there yet, for sure. And that is partly what this film, with outreach of the film, what we're hoping to do is to improve the situation and show that there are lots of ways that it could just be improved just quite easily and quickly and that kind of thing. I think with the attack in London, it reminds me that I have a lot of male privilege, and I'm read as a straight, cis, white, middle-class man. And it's very easy to lose sight of how much of a privilege that is, because the society is set up to make you lose sight of it all the time. And I think I benefited from that privilege even when I was pregnant. And so I think it's my job to sort of, I have as much of a duty as other people who are read in the same way that I am to, amplify voices and work with people who don't have the privilege that I enjoy. So in a way, I can see why that question seems, am I afraid? But I just have to say, I don't face the same risks and the same dangers as those women do, or as trans women do, or as queer people of colour. And I don't want to make it seem as though I'm not aware of that, because I think the film is wonderful, and I'm really glad that I'm able to share my story. But it's all my privilege exists regardless, which even though I was pregnant,
So I think we need to wrap it up now. So I just wanted to say thank you so much, Freddy, for sharing your story, and I can't wait till it goes out on the BBC, but it's got a journey to happen before that. And thank you, Jeanie, for making a wonderful film. And please, again, give them a big round of applause.